T minus 1 minute. T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. He's your only black friend, so he's your best black friend. I want to trade him for another black friend. Because black friends are rare, as you should be aware. He smiles like Richard Pryor, so just sit and stare. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler.
Hey guys, Tyler here. This is episode 2 of just me reacting to people thinking that the Quran is somehow pretty much progressive. And so without further hesitation, let's see the various videos that I'm going to respond to, because I was surprised about the amount of content I found for the first part for this episode. And so we're going to see like the more videos for this particular part. Now, this one has to do with the death penalty and what people on TikTok think what the death penalty entails when it comes down to this particular faith. So, without further hesitation, let's watch the video.
Is there a death sentence for those who leave Islam? This is something a lot of people have brought to my attention in the past few weeks. And the word for it is apostasy. So, in other words, leaving Islam and not believing in Islam anymore. Okay, so I think I found an answer in the Quran. So, it says here in Al-Nisa, or 4, Surah 4, 137. As for those who come to believe and then deny the truth, and again come to believe and again deny the truth, and therefore grow stubborn in their denial of the truth, God will never forgive them, nor will he guide them. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is that the person is going in and out of belief, okay? It's showing that in the Quran. So if a person were to be killed as soon as they stopped believing or they left Islam, how could they have the opportunity to come into belief and out of belief again, as it is showing in the Quran? So based on the Quran, which is the ruling source for all of Islam over any hadith, I do not find that the death penalty is able to be applied to apostasy or people who leave Islam, because it's saying here in the Quran that people are going in and out of faith, and they would not be able to do that if they died the first time. And about the second part of this verse, about God never forgiving them or guiding them, this is if they grow stubborn in their denial of the truth. So if someone is dead set on not believing in Allah, Allah is not going to force you to believe in him, okay? So if your heart is open and you want to find Allah, he's there. But if your heart is closed and you don't want to find Allah, you don't have any intent to find Allah, then he will not force you to.
Well, this is certainly more progressive in comparison to, I guess, you can say, the more fundamentalist interpretations of this particular issue. But unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case when it comes down to the whole entire issue about apostasy. Because according to the data that's been done by Pew Research Center, about 89% of Muslims, according to the data, consider themselves to be Sunni. And I believe the remaining numbers for the particular Muslim population are Shiites. And so, for the case of the majority of Muslims, they do in fact follow at least three different books. The first book that they follow is something, of course, like everybody knows the Quran. There's also the various hadith that they also tend to follow. They also tend to follow the biography of Muhammad, which, by the way, is really important to know the biography of Muhammad. That way, you get to know like the context behind the verses when you start to read the verses. And here are some of the verses that I found in regards to the whole entire issue about apostates, according to the hadith right here. It says right here, Allah's apostle said, "The blood of a Muslim who confessed that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and that I am his apostle, cannot be shed except in three cases: for murder, for a married person who commits illegal sexual intercourse, and the one who reverts from Islam and leaves the Muslim." Again, it says also right here that Ali burned some people, and this news reached Abbas, who said, "Had I been in this place, I would not have burned them, as the Prophet said, 'Don't punish anybody with Allah's punishment.' No doubt I would have killed them, for the Prophet said, 'If someone, a Muslim, discards his religion, kill him.'" And the final hadith to refute the point that was made in the video is, "A man embraced Islam, then reverted back to Judaism. Jabal came and saw the man with Abu Musa. He asked, 'What is wrong with this man?' Musa replied, 'He embraced Islam and then reverted back to Judaism.' Then he said, 'I will not sit down unless you kill him, as is the verdict of Allah and his apostle.'" So, unfortunately, there are many, many verses where they basically do, in fact, say that if you were to, of course, leave the faith, that the punishment is pretty much death if you were to leave. The second video is a bit different and has to do with spousal abuse. And this particular person in this video tries to downplay the idea spousal abuse that are contained within the Islamic text. So here's the video right here. We're going to take a listen to what she has to say.
Right now, 434 is on husbands as providers and protectors. Men are the caretakers of women, as men have been provisioned by Allah over women and tasked with supporting them financially. And righteous women are devoutly obedient and, when alone, protective of what Allah has entrusted them with. And the footnote there is that that's about their honor and wealth. And if you sense ill conduct from your women, advise them first. If they persist, do not share their beds. But if they still persist, then discipline them gently. But if they change their ways, do not be unjust to them. Surely Allah is most high, all great. And then the footnote there says, disciplining one's wife gently is the final resort. The earliest commentators understood this was to be light enough not to leave a mark, should be done with nothing bigger than a toothstick, and should not be in the face. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said to his companions, "Do not beat the female servants of Allah." He said that honorable husbands do not beat their wives, and he himself never hit a woman or a servant. If a woman feels her husband is ill behaved, then she can get help from her guardian or seek divorce. So sure, that doesn't look great if you zero in on the fact that it says that you can discipline them gently, but look at the first part, right? The first part is saying that it's their responsibility to financially take care and be a caretaker for the wife. You can't just be a bum. There's another translation that says to talk to them suasively, or like persuasively be nice and gentle to them rather than advise. So like make nice, right? Translation says do not share their beds. Ahmed Ali takes it a step further and says without molesting them, for the ones who couldn't figure that out. Again, in a patriarchal society where it's often considered that men just deserve access to their wives' bodies regardless, to say to leave them alone, that's great. And you don't just get to go have your way with them just because you want to and because you're mad at them. And Ahmed Ali, the one who says without molesting them, instead of saying strike them at the end, says go to bed with them when they are willing. I found this explanation that I'm not going to read all of it, but some of the important parts are that he says faizu means to talk to them so persuasively as to melt their hearts. He talks about the next part being about separating body from body and metaphorically meaning to refrain from touching or molesting. And the last part is metaphorically about having intercourse. The stag camel covered the she camel. So they say that it cannot be taken here to mean to strike them.
Alright, so let's try to respond to every single last point that she basically made in the video because it's like ridiculous. There's actually some people who speak Arabic in this thread for Twitter, and it says right here, it is noteworthy that her version of the book has downplayed the word darabuk, which means to beat and strike, as I highlighted here. And so basically, when she said in the video that it doesn't necessarily mean to beat your woman is actually wrong, according to this particular Arabic speaker right here. And also, I think there's like some other Arabic speakers in this thread that also made the whole entire argument too. But also, she also mentioned before that more or less that the prophet never had a chance to really beat like one of his wives. There's actually a hadith that goes against what she's basically saying. And so as soon as the page loads up, I'll show you guys like the hadith and what exactly I mean. Because there is one story I particularly remember where more or less the Prophet Muhammad actually pushed Aisha on the chest and then she basically fell down as a direct result of that. So here's the hadith right here. It says right here, should I not narrate to you a hadith of the Holy Prophet on my authority and on the authority of my mother? I thought he meant the mother who gave him birth. He then reported that it was Aisha who narrated this. Should I not narrate to you about myself and the messenger of Allah, may peace be upon him? We said, yes. She said, what is my turn for Allah's messenger, may peace be upon him, to spend the night with me? He turned aside, put on his mantle, and took off his shoes, and placed them near his feet, and spread the corner of a scroll in his bed, and then lied down until he thought that I had gone to sleep. He held the mantle slowly, and put on his shoes slowly, and opened the door, and went out, and then closed it lightly. I covered my head, I put on my veil, and tightened my waist wrapper. By the way, when it says right here, I covered my head, that's actually a direct reference to the veil, and so there's actually an Islamic reference to putting on veils. It's not necessarily just cultural. And then went down his steps until he reached Greek. He stood there and stood for like a long time. He then lifted up his hands 3 times and returned, and I also returned. He hastened his steps, and I also hastened my steps. He ran, and I also ran too. He came to the house, and I also came to the house. I, however, preceded him and entered the house. As I laid down in the bed, he, the Holy Prophet, entered the house, and said, why is it, O Aisha, you are out of breath? I said, there is nothing. He said, tell me, or the subtle and the aware will inform me. I said, messenger of Allah, may my father and mother be ransomed for you, and I told him the whole story. He said, was it the darkness of your shadow that saw in front of me? I said, yes. He struck me on the chest, which caused me pain, and then he said, do you think that Allah and his apostle would deal unjustly with you? So basically, in the original video, she said that Muhammad never beat his wife, but here we have an example of Muhammad beating Aisha, this time in the chest. And so she got the translation wrong, and she got the whole entire idea that Muhammad never beat his wife before entirely wrong. And I guess another verse that's like, really popular is, of course, the whole entire issue about fighting. There's actually this person I found that basically claims that more or less that it does not necessarily mean fighting when it talks about the issue of jihad. So let's play this video and try to respond to as many of the claims as possible. So I'm gonna see. Yeah, it's not necessarily loading. There it goes. I think it's working right now. Yeah, I'm sure it's not loading right now for the video. I don't know what is going on right here. I have to probably just reload.
Today, I'm
There
going
you
to
go.
go through fighting war, hurting other people. What does it say in the Quran? So many people are coming in and saying, "Oh, how do you feel about girls getting married at 9 and getting married and sex, and what about terrorism, the bombing, strapping bombs to children and sending them in to get killed?" Well, it's not what I'm reading in the Quran, and I think if some of you just take one moment just to pick up the Quran and just read the first few verses in there, I'm sure you'll see for yourself how peaceful it is.
All right, let's address the first point right here. She said in the very first verses of the Quran, it is very peaceful. The very few verses of the Quran, starting in chapter 2 and beyond, is about the issue about hellfire. Hell is mentioned every other verse, and so if you don't necessarily believe in Allah, you're essentially going to be born in torture for all eternity. And I don't consider the notion of internal torture to be incredibly peaceful. It would be the complete opposite of what exactly is peaceful. She also mentioned in the video that basically when it comes down to the issue of like child marriages, that basically there's no such thing that actually occurs within the Islamic faith, but that's not necessarily true either. So I'm gonna share with you like a whole entire hadith that basically goes into the whole entire issue about Aisha, because she is like one of the many wives that basically Muhammad had. And so it says right here, and this is actually certified by the way from Bukhari, that the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. I have been informed that Aisha remained with the Prophet for 9 years until his death. So basically, the whole entire point of a Muslim is to basically follow the actions directly of Muhammad. And unfortunately, there are many Muslim countries that continue to have child brides to this very day because they want to directly replicate the ideas of Muhammad. And because Muhammad married Aisha when she was about, like I said, 6 years old and consummated the marriage when she was 9 years old, many people simply want to duplicate that. And that is insanity. That's also very much insanity. But also, I believe, according to some other sources that I heard, that more or less that there's no such age limit at all when it comes down to, of course, people wanting to get married. So again, it's so sad that she's trying to justify it. I'm going to go back to the video. Just give me 1 second to find the exact screen. Okay, there it is. There's the screen. I'm going to continue to play.
So to start off with, I'm going to take a couple of verses, but I'm not going to read the whole verse out to start with, to show you how easy it is to mix things up. I'll start off, I've got one here, Surah 4, 101. Now, if you just take a small section, for the unbelievers are unto you open enemies. So that's like saying they're open enemies. You can kill them at any time because they're open enemies. But if you read the whole verse, Surah 4, 101, when you travel during war, you commit no error by shortening your contact prayers. If you fear the disbelievers may attack you, surely the disbelievers are ardent enemies. So it's saying they're enemies, but it's not saying attack them. It's talking about your prayers. So if you're somewhere and you feel unsafe and you don't think it's safe to get down and do your prayers, this is what it's telling you here. It's not telling you to kill people. Take another little one. Surah 8, 12 to 13. I will instill terror into the hearts of the unbelievers, smite you above their necks, and smite all their fingertips off. This because they contend against God and his apostle. Now, if you read the whole verse, Recall that your Lord inspires the angels. I am with you, so support those who believed. I will throw terror into the hearts of those who disbelieved. You may strike them above their necks, you may strike them in every finger. This is what they have justly incurred by fighting God and his messenger. For those who fight against God and his messenger, God's retribution is severe. Another one, just to give you a little example. So Surah 9:5. Fight and slay the pagans where ye find them, and seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem. If you go to the whole verse, you'll see it changes it completely. Surah 9:4-5. If the idol worshippers sign a peace treaty with you and do not violate it, nor band together with others against you, you shall fulfill your treaty with them until the expiration date. God loves the righteous. Once the sacred months are past and they refuse to make peace, you may kill the idol worshippers when you encounter them, punish them, and resist every move they make. Makes a big difference when you read the whole thing out, doesn't it? I think it does anyway. And if you go read the Quran, if you just take 5 minutes out of your day and just read bits of the Quran, you will know that it is really peaceful. I'm going to share with you some of the surahs in the Quran to show you that aggression is forbidden. Fighting is only in self-defense.
Alright, before we play the rest of the video, I need to respond to every single last claim that that person made really fast, because this right here is just absolutely, completely ridiculous. Just let me take like 1 minute to switch the screen, that way I have the verse to basically make a counter argument to what she's basically saying. So let's go to the very first thing, like, when it comes down to the issue about fighting. There's actually one particular verse that I find to be particularly interesting, because it says right here, in cases of abrogation, that we substitute a verse in place of a verse, and Allah is most knowing. On what he sent down, they say, you, O Muhammad, are but an inventor of lies, but most of them do not know. This particular verse is an abrogation of the peacetime verse. And so, what exactly was the context for the other verses that abrogated those kind of verses? The context is that according to the biography of Muhammad, he was basically growing up as an orphan. It was not until his 40s that he received direct revelation from the angel Gabriel. And because he got the direct revelation from the angel, what he did was, of course, try to spread to the religion as many people as possible when it comes down to Mecca. And when he went to Medina, that's when he began to become a warlord and began to have a series of holy wars in that particular region. But during Mecca, he was mostly peaceful. He was trying to convert people in the Mecca period through the word of mouth and not necessarily by the sword. And according to the story that I read yesterday, now, basically, the first ever occurrence of bloodshed for that particular case for Mecca was when there was actually disagreements between the Muslims and other people, and it got so bad that they used a camel bone to basically attack the other group, to actually attack them out, I guess, because they were frustrated. That was like the first ever bloodshed that actually occurred. But of course, because he became a warlord in Medina, that's why the whole entire early peacetime verses are much more abrogated in comparison to the verses about war and violence and cruelty. Now, what's like another example that I have when it comes down to the whole entire issue about fighting? Well, there's actually something else that's also based upon like the biography of Muhammad that I had to play for you guys. It's actually an audiobook that I have about the life of Muhammad, and basically it puts into context about the wartime verses. It's actually on chapter what was it, chapter 3? And so what we're gonna do is go to 1 hour and 12 minutes. Yeah, 1 hour and 12 minutes right here. And listen to the audiobook and see the context on why exactly it was talking about war and violence. And we go back to the TikTok video.
He has also prohibited me from forcing any one of you to do anything against his will. If, therefore, any of you wishes to earn martyrdom, let him come with me. But if not, let him go back. All his companions went with him, and none remained behind. But at Bahran, 2 of the travelers lost the camel which they had been riding in turns, and they fell behind to look for it. Abdallah marched on with the rest of his companions to Nakhla, where they came upon a Quraysh caravan laden with raisins, tanned hides, and various other goods, and accompanied by 4 men. When the caravan saw Abdallah and his companions, they were afraid, because they had alighted so near to them. But when Ukasha, whose head was shaved like that of a pilgrim, approached them, they recovered their confidence and said, "These are pilgrims, and we need have no fear of them." This took place on the last day of the sacred month Rajab, October. Abdallah and his companions conferred among themselves. If we allow these people to continue and reach sacred territory tonight, they will be safe from us. But if we attack them now, we profane the sacred month. And they vacillated and hesitated to attack, but at last mustered up their courage and agreed to slay as many of the Quraysh as they could, and take possession of what they had with them. So Waqid shot an arrow and killed one of the Quraysh. 2 others were made prisoner, and the 4th fled. Then Abdallah, with his companions, the caravan, and the prisoners, returned to Medina, saying, "1/5 part of our plunder belongs to the Apostle of Allah." This was before Allah had made it incumbent on believers to give up a 5th part of any booty to him. 1/5 of the caravan was set aside for the
By the way, I want to note for you guys that yes, when Muhammad was in fact fighting against the unbelievers, he did in fact get sex slaves. But he is the perfect man, guys. He is the absolute perfect man. But let's continue with the audiobook.
the Apostle of Allah, and Abdallah distributed the rest among his companions. When they arrived in Medina, however, the Apostle said, "I did not command you to fight in the holy month." And he walked away from the caravan and the prisoners, and refused to take anything from them. The captors were crestfallen, and decided they were doomed, and their Muslim brethren, too, reproved them for their deed. In Mecca, the Quraysh were saying, "Muhammad and his companions have violated the sacred month. They have shed blood in it, and taken booty, and captured prisoners." The Jews interpreted the event as a bad omen for the apostle. When speculation on the subject became widespread, Allah revealed these words to his apostle: "They will ask thee about the sacred month and the fighting. Say, to fight in the sacred month is a matter of grave import, but to obstruct the worship of Allah and not to believe in him, to prevent men from entering the holy mosque or to drive them out of it, these are of even graver import." So the Apostle of Allah took possession of the caravan and the prisoners. The Quraysh sent men to negotiate for the ransom of the prisoners, but the Apostle replied that he could not release them until the 2 emigrants who had fallen behind Abdallah to look for their camel returned, because he feared the Quraysh might have met and harmed them. "If you have killed them, we shall kill our prisoners," he said. But the two wanderers returned, and the apostle released the prisoners, one of them making profession of Islam and remaining in Medina with Muhammad. When Allah made plunder permissible, he allowed 4 parts to those who had won it, and 1 part to himself and to his apostle, exactly as Abdallah had done with the captured caravan. This was the occasion when the first booty was taken by the Muslims, when the first prisoners were taken by the Muslims, and when the first man was slain by the Muslims. It was 18 months since the immigrants had arrived in Medina. Soon the apostle of Allah heard that Abu Sufyan, whom he had missed at Al-Ushaira, was returning from Syria with a large caravan of merchandise, accompanied by 30 or 40 men. Then he addressed the believers, saying, "Go forth against this caravan. It may be that Allah will grant you plunder." The people soon assembled, though some were fearful, and others hesitated because they had not thought the apostle would really go to war. Meanwhile, Abu Sufyan was approaching the Hijaz, gathering information and questioning every rider he met, lest he expose his people to danger. At last he heard, "Muhammad has gathered his companions to attack you and your caravan." Greatly alarmed, he sent off a messenger named Damdam to Mecca to call out the Quraysh to protect their goods and to warn them of the threat of Muhammad and his companions. When Damdam arrived in Mecca, he cut off the nose of his camel, turned its saddle back to front, and rent his own shirt, all to indicate the alarming news he brought. He shouted, "O ye Quraysh, your prized caravan is in danger from Muhammad. You may be too late to save it. Help, go now." The people hastened to prepare, exclaiming, "Does Muhammad believe this will be as easy a victory as at Nakhla? No, this time we shall teach him otherwise." Thus the Quraysh assembled, and not a well-born man among them remained behind, save Abu Lahab, who sent in his place a man who owed him money and who could not pay. The apostle himself left Medina with his companions early in the month of Ramadan, December, leaving Abu Lubaba in control of affairs at Medina. The white banner of the apostle was carried by Musab, and one black banner, the eagle, by Ali, and another by the helpers. There were 70 camels, which the men rode in turn. When the party arrived in Al-Safra, a village between 2 mountains, the apostle asked the names of the village tribes, and was told they were called Banu al-Nar, sons of fire, and Banu Hurak, sons of burning. The apostle was uneasy, and read an evil omen in the names, so he bypassed the village and the mountains, and travelled through a valley known as Dafiran. Halting here, he received news that the Quraysh were on the march from Mecca to protect their caravan. He asked his people what they thought should be done, and Al-Miqdad said, "Go where Allah leads. We are with thee, and we shall not say to thee what the children of Israel said to Moses, 'Thou and thy Lord may go and fight, we shall remain here.' Instead, we say, 'Go thou and thy Lord and fight, we shall fight with you.'" The apostle thanked him for this declaration and blessed him, and said, "Advise me also, you men of the helpers." He feared the helpers might aid him only by defending him against attack in Medina, and that they would not think it incumbent upon them to fight for him outside their own territory. But Sad answered, "We believe in thee, and have testified that the revelation thou hast brought is true. Therefore we have made a covenant. We hear and obey thee. Go where thou wilt, we are with thee. We shall be steady in battle and true in combat. And perhaps Allah will show thee something of us which will rejoice the eye and procure the blessings of Allah." When the apostle of Allah arrived near Badr, he received news of the whereabouts of the Quraysh, and sent several of his companions to the well at Badr to investigate further. The companions brought back 2 slaves, watermen of the Quraysh, who confessed to Muhammad that the Quraysh are at the rear of that sandhill. The apostle asked, "How many men are there?" And they replied, "Many." He asked, "What is their number?" But the slaves said that they did not know. "How many camels do they slaughter daily?" The slaves replied, "Some days 9, and some days 10. And the apostle said, "Then they must be from 900 to 1,000 in number." Meanwhile, 2 of the companions had gone back to the well to fetch water, and they overheard a conversation between 2 girls and a tribesman, who said, "Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow the caravan will arrive." Abu Sufyan, however, had scouted ahead of his caravan, and he reached the water unobserved after the 2 companions had left. There he asked the tribesman if any strangers had been seen, and was told, "No one suspicious, except 2 riders, who alighted near the hill, took water to fill their water bottles, and departed." Abu Sufyan went to the spot where they had halted, examining the camel dung there, found that it contained date stones.
I'm sorry it's like taking forever for this particular part, but I want to get to the part where basically it shows like the context by that verse about fighting, and I'm gonna try to skip a little bit right here. It's gonna be like I think around here. Yeah.
After the battle, Abdul Rahman passed near some Quraysh who had been unable to flee, and saw his old friend Umayyah with his son. Umayyah exclaimed, "Are you willing to take me prisoner? My ransom will be of more value to you than the plunder you are laden with." Throwing away his plunder, Abdul Rahman took him and his son by the hand and walked with them. But Bilal saw him with me, and it was Umayyah who had tormented Bilal when he was a slave at Mecca. When he caught sight of him now, he exclaimed, "Worst of infidels, let me die if he be allowed to live." And he cried out to the companions of the apostle to kill Umayyah. They formed a ring round us, and I tried to protect him. But a man struck off the leg of the son of Umayyah, and he fell to the ground. Then Umayyah uttered a cry such as I had never heard before. I said to him, "Save thyself. I can no longer help thee." And the people fell upon them with their swords and killed them both. And I said, "May Allah have mercy on Bilal. My plunder has gone, and he has deprived me of my captives too." After the apostle of Allah had done with the enemy, he ordered that the body of Abu Jahl be sought among the slain. The first man who had encountered Abu Jahl in the battle was Muad, who had attacked him and struck off his foot and ankle. But Abu Jahl's son dealt Muad such a blow as almost cut his hand from his arm. "It remained dangling at my side, held only by the skin," said Muad. "After that, the battle drew me away from Abu Jahl, and I continued to fight all day, dragging my hand after me. But after a while it annoyed me too much, and I placed my foot on it and wrenched it off. Then I threw it away." Another of the companions later smote the crippled Abu Jahl, but there still remained a spark of life in him. When Muhammad ordered the search, he was found by Abdullah bin Masud. I found him in his last agony, and recognized him. I placed my foot on his neck, for he had once caught hold of me in Mecca, insulted me, and kicked me in the chest, and said to him, "Allah has at last put you to shame, O enemy of Allah." He retorted, "In what way has he put me to shame? Is it shame to a man that you have killed him? Tell me who is victorious this day." I replied, "Allah and his apostle." Then I cut off his head and brought it to the apostle of Allah and said, "This is the head of Abu Jahl, the enemy of Allah." Then I threw the head down before the apostle, and he praised Allah. Then the apostle of Allah ordered the slain to be thrown into a pit, and all were thrown into it except Umayyah, whose body was so swollen that it could not easily be taken out of its armor. Therefore they threw as much earth and rubble on the body as would cover it. When the bodies had been thrown into the pit, the apostles said, "Now, you people of the pit, have you realized the truth of your Lord's promise? For I have found what my Lord promised me has been fulfilled." His companions said, "Do you speak to dead men?" And he replied, "They know that what I say is true." After the battle, the apostle ordered all the plunder to be collected, and the companions disputed about it. Those who had collected it said, "It belongs to us." And those who had pursued the enemy said, "Had it not been for us, you would not have been able to collect it." Those, too, who had guarded the person of the apostle, lest he be attacked, said, "You have no greater right to it than we. We desire to fight, but we could not leave the apostle of Allah." Then Allah took out of their hands all cause for dispute, entrusting his apostle with the distribution of the spoils, and he promised equal shares to all the Muslims. The apostle of Allah sent a messenger ahead to bear the glad tidings of victory, and then set off himself for Medina with the army, plunder, and prisoners. At Raucha, the faithful met to congratulate him on the victory which Allah had granted to him and his companions. But Salama exclaimed, "Why do you congratulate us? By Allah, we met only bald-headed old men whom we slaughtered like hobbled camels." At this the apostle smiled and said, "But, nephew, those were the elders of the community." At Al-Safra, on the return journey, the apostle ordered one of the prisoners, Al-Nadr, to be executed, and another, Uqba, later in the journey. The apostle of Allah reached Medina one day ahead of the prisoners, and when they arrived, he distributed among them his companions, saying, "Treat the captives well." And they treated them with great kindliness. Soon after his return, the apostle assembled the Jews in the marketplace and addressed them. "Make profession of Islam before Allah punishes you as he has punished the Quraysh." But they replied, "Do not deceive yourself. You have slain a few Quraysh who were inexperienced and did not know how to fight. If you had fought with us, you would have learned that we are men such as whom you have not yet encountered." Then Allah sent down the verse, "Say to those who disbelieve, you will be conquered and gathered together in hell." It was a miracle when the two armies met at Badr. One army fought in the name of Allah, the other was thrice their number, but thought the believers as numerous as themselves. But Allah gives strength by his aid to those whom he will. Surely in that there is a lesson for those with eyes to see. Concerning the affair of Badr, Allah revealed a whole surah, the spoils. Say, the spoils belong to Allah and to his apostle. Allah promised that one of the two parties, the caravan or the Quraysh army, would fall to you, and some hoped that it might be the weaker one, the caravan. But Allah proposed to establish the truth of his word, and to cut down the uttermost part of the unbelievers. When you prayed for assistance from your Lord, beholding the multitude of your enemies, Allah said, "I shall aid you with 1,000 angels in serried ranks." And Allah instructed his angels, "I shall throw terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. Therefore strike off their heads and strike off their fingers, because they have resisted Allah and his apostle, and Allah is severe in his punishment."
Okay, that's the whole entire context for that particular verse. So more or less, when Muhammad was doing a holy battle and the Jews saw that he defeated the other kind of group, basically when he says to strike terror into the non-believers, that's the whole entire context of the verse. It's not necessarily as for self-defense like the woman says. So let's go back to that particular video on TikTok where she was trying to defend this. So I'm sorry that it took like a long time, but it's really, really important to know the context when it says to strike against the non-believers. That's the whole entire context based upon the biography.
In Surah 2, 190, you fight in the cause of God against those who attack you, but do not aggress. God does not love the aggressors. Also, Surah 2, 191, you may kill those who wage war against you, and you may evict them once they evicted you. Oppression is the worse than murder. Do not fight them at the sacred mosque unless they attack you therein. If they attack you, you may kill them. This is a just retribution for those disbelievers. We can go a little bit further down to 192. If they refrain, then God is forgiver, most merciful. Surah 2, 193. You may also fight them to eliminate oppression and to worship God freely. If they refrain, you shall not aggress. Aggression is permitted only against the aggressors. In Surah 5, 87. O you who believe, do not prohibit good things that are made lawful by God, and do not aggress. God dislikes aggressors. Surah 8, 61. If they resort to peace, so shall you, and you put your trust in God. He is the hearer, the omniscient. Surah 490. If they leave you alone, refrain from fighting you, and offer you peace, then God gives you no excuse to fight them. I mean, the Quran goes to the point, you don't have to. He's not saying that you have to follow him. Everyone has a choice. Let me see if I can read. No compulsion in religion. So, if we go to Surah 2, 256, there shall be no compulsion in religion.
Okay, this is getting really bad. Okay, I need to respond to some of these points, guys. This is like absolutely ridiculous. So let's go to like a different window. Hold on. She mentioned, let me try to go onto Google really fast. She mentions no compulsion religion. Let me go to that particular verse really fast. No, that's like it's not necessarily saying that it's not compulsory to fight against hold on, let me look for that verse in particular. No compulsion. Yeah, that's not true. Hold on, let me go to that particular chapter. Because I know that the context for that particular verse is not saying that you cannot fight. I know that's a lie. That is a complete lie. Mostly. Let me look at it right here. There it is. Just 1 second. Okay. It says right here, yeah, there is no compulsion in religion, for the truth stands out clearly from falsehood. So whoever renounces false gods and believes in Allah has certainly grasped the firmest, unfailing handheld, and Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing. And let's continue on with the other verse that came after that particular verse, because I know it's not just saying you cannot necessarily fight. And it says right here, wait, hold on, where is it? Yeah, right there. Allah is the guardians of the believers who bring them out of darkness into light. As for the disbelievers, their guardians are false gods who lead them out of light into darkness. It is who are the residents of the fire, they will be there forever. And it finally says right here, are you, O Prophet, not aware of the one who argued with Abraham about his Lord, because Allah has granted him his kingship? Remember when Abraham said, my Lord is the one who has the power to give life and cause death. So basically, it's not necessarily saying that you cannot necessarily fight them. There's also like another verse that completely contradicts what she was saying in the video. Because there is one verse I particularly remember where it says that fighting is actually compulsory for you. Let me go to that particular verse. Give me like 1 second. It says right here, fighting has been made obligatory among you believers, though you dislike it. Perhaps you dislike something which is good for you and like something that is bad for you. Allah knows that and you do not. So basically, according to that particular verse, like basically fighting is actually prescribed for all Muslims to basically do. So it contradicts the verse that she basically mentioned earlier. Let's continue on with the video.
The right way is now distinct from the wrong way. Anyone who denounces the devil and believes in God has grasped the strongest bond, one that never breaks. God is the hearer. And there's another one, absolute freedom. Surah 18:29. This is the truth from the Lord. Then whoever wills, let him believe, and whoever wills, let him disbelieve. We have prepared for the transgressors a fire that will completely surround them.
If it's really the case that they would not want people to just believe and just live and let live, why is it for the case there are many verses that talks about the jizya, for example, where basically they force the Christians and the Jews to pay like a tax whenever they come out and conquer the land? How come there's those kind of verses? Why are there verses, for example, where it states in the Hadith that basically if a Jew would hide underneath the tree to go and cut off the head of the Jew? So basically, the verses that you mentioned contradict the other verses that talk about war and violence.
When they scream for help, they will be given a liquid like concentrated acid that scalds their faces. What a miserable drink. What a miserable destiny. I think so too. You can see inside the Quran, there is no hate. There is no aggression unless you.
You know, it's interesting that she mentioned that there is no hate. So let's go to a particular verse I remember seeing where basically it's said in the Quran that Jews and Christians are basically lesser than Muslims, right? Hold on, let me look for it right now. Quran. Jews and Christians are lesser than Muslims. I know there's like a verse like that somewhere. Let's see. Hold on. Where it's not showing up right here. I know there's like a verse like that. Yeah. Yeah. Hold on. Yeah. So yeah. Don't trust the Jews. Don't trust the Christians. Wait. Oh, no, not that one. No, it's not that one either. Hold on. Okay. All right. I think I found the verse right here. Yes, right here. O believers, take the Jews nor Christians as guardians. They are the guardians of each other. Whoever does well do be counted among them. Surely Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people. Yeah, but yeah, there's basically like a verse that basically says that they're actually lesser in comparison to Muslims. But yeah, that's the old videos that I have listed for this particular live stream, guys. But yeah, it's really trending nowadays to basically be a progressive in favor of the Quran. What do you guys think about all the videos that I play for this stream? Tell me in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.